For the rest of this year, we have 3 tours. One to Mapungubwe and the cradle of human mankind, a great place full of history, and a tour to Lake Jazini and Tembe Elephant Park, which is a most amazing place, and a revamped battlefields tour that we haven't done since pre-COVID times. On the Tembe tour, the first place we stop in, where we stop for lunch, is the most incredible place. We stop for lunch at Yada Castle, a place that you just don't expect to stop at. It has a wonderful atmosphere. That's the dining room where we stop for lunch. We actually go on the balcony because it's much nicer in summer, or in winter we can stay inside. But really, a quite incredible place. The food is typical Middle Eastern and a huge variety. Then we make our way to Marapeng, the cradle of human mankind, which is an incredible underground place. And of course, it's very famous now for the hominoids, the ancestors of modern humans, which first emerged 7 million years ago and which were discovered recently. In the cradle of human mankind, you not only explore the evolution of mankind, you also go on a ride trip underground, which portrays how the earth was formed over millions and millions of years ago in the three stages, and plus all sorts of exhibitions portraying how man has evolved over millions of years. Those ladies standing there are the lady archaeologists that worked on the hominoids. They had to be below a certain size and a weight width to fit into the cave. A wonderful area, the cradle of human mankind. Mapungubwe is a World Heritage Site, and it has been recorded on numerous TV channels, such as several on BBC, programs on National Geographic, CNN. Why is it a World Heritage Site? Well, a king of advanced black tribe lived on the top of this hill till the 13th century. Mapungubwe means the hill of the jackal. And this advanced tribe traded gold and ivory with India, China, and Egypt. They made gold ornaments and jewelry, and excavations found beads from India and pottery from China. Now, where is Mapungubwe? Mapungubwe is across the border from Botswana and Zimbabwe up north in Limpopo province. And what you have is the Limpopo River running along here, which is the border between South Africa and Botswana, and the Shasti River, which is a bigger river, is the border between Botswana and Zimbabwe, and the two join to become the Limpopo River, which then eventually flows into the sea. The Limpopo River splits into two and creates, part goes into the Shasti River here, and the other goes into the Shasti River here, and creates this little island. And this is quite a magical site where the two rivers confluence. All the way along here are private game reserves. In this little area, there is a game reserve, and in the middle of that game reserve is Venetia, a new diamond mine from De Beers for Polokwane. And then you go to an area of really mainly private game reserves along the road, and you also pass a very big solar generating power plants with all these screens distant in the distance, which feeds into the Eskom. You then pass through All Days, where we always stop for lunch. All Days is roughly here, and there's a 70-kilometer drive to Mapungubwe. Now, how was Mapungubwe discovered? After the discovery of gold in South Africa, prospectors swarmed all over the country looking for gold, and gold fragments were found on both sides of Limpopo from the late 1800s. And many people heard stories of a holy site of great wealth. Explorer Francois Lottery discovered the hill, Mapungubwe Hill, in 1890, but it wasn't well publicized. The site was rediscovered by a farmer and prospector, E. van Graan, and his son, on the 31st of December in 1932. Now, like many people in the area, there were all these rumors about this hill, which was full of gold. So he asked the elderly local man, Mwena, to show him the hill. And Mwena said, I'll show you where the hill is, but I won't go up because it's a holy site. And Chachana the son found stone walls, gold and iron artifacts, pottery, gold and glass beads. Now, Chachan's son realized that this was really a unique location and of great importance. So he contacted, quite wisely, Pretoria University. And Professor Leo Fouché started excavating in 1933. And it continued till 1947. There's been excavations further in the area and in other areas, and a lot more to go. The Pretoria University negotiated with E.E. Collins to take ownership of the land of where the artifacts were and the excavations were. And the university, with the help of the government, stopped the planned gold prospecting in the area. And the two key archaeological sites were bought by the university. Very far thinking in 1933. Now, Mapungubwe Hill is 300 meters long and is very steep on both sides. And when you go up, you will go up the side, and it really is steep. And in those days, the only way up was two little paths, which involved a lot of clambering up. Nowadays, there's a wooden staircase up. But 2,000 tons of soil was carried up the steep sides to the top by some unknown ancient people. Now, there were numerous buildings, remnants of buildings found on the hill. And the dwellings were often built on previous dwellings, which showed several generations of people had lived there. Carbon dating tended to show the first dwelling was built around 1045. And the adjacent side was older, and the further site, which is even older. So there were obviously these people living in this area or near this area from at least 800. Now, the assumption was overcrowding caused people to move from the site, which is 80.6 kilometers away, to Mapungubwe Hill in 1045. And it's likely that there are also older settlements in the area. The royalty and nobility were on top of the hill, and there were signs of gold and iron smelting. In the excavations done by Pretoria University, 7,503 ounces of gold artifacts were found on top of the hill. And there was probably more in the area, which was probably robbed from graves. The K2 site, which is 0.6 kilometers away, were the subsistence farmers. So we had a structured class system, and it'll be the first structured class system of nobility and the rest of the population in sub-Saharan Africa. But by the 1400s, all these people moved. The K2 farmers, 0.6 kilometers away, were skilled craftsmen. They weren't just farmers. They produced thousands of glass beads by drilling holes in the ones from India. They produced glass heads. They made tools. They made jewelry. They made figurines. And from evidence on the skeletons, they seem to have eaten a far better diet than other local people in the area. Golden Jekka sheets were made. Beads had holes drilled into them, and the tools for drilling were found there. And most of the artifacts were made from local materials. Bangles and geometric pattern jewelry was made, and thousands of gold beads were found in the graves, and much pottery from China. Some also local pottery was also made. Now, a redating of the Chinese pottery excavator Mapungubwe was done by a joint project by Tuckey's University, Pretoria University, Oxford University, and the Mapungubwe Museum in June 2005. And this showed that a lot of the Chinese pottery was made in the Southern Song dynasty from about 1127 to 1279. And these were bits excavated in 1934. But some shards of pottery indicated higher firing temperatures than expected. And the analysis showed that there were also shards, possibly yuan, made in the period of 1279 to 1368, and possibly early Ming. And these, of course, have a result that perhaps the people lived in that area for slightly longer than we originally thought. Now, looking at the graves on top of the hill, and many of the graves, when they opened them up, some had been opened by animals or by people, and also at the Katy site. And some of the graves, when they opened them up, there had been air leakage and they just disintegrated into dust. But skeleton labeled number 14, who was a female, was buried with at least 100 gold wire bangles around the ankles. And there were at least 1,000 gold beads in her grave. The last burial male, who was probably the king, he was buried with a headrest and 3 objects made of gold foil tacked onto a wooden core, depicting a bowl, a scepter, and a rhino. At least 2 more rhinos, golden rhinos, in the sample, but the association with that specific grave is relatively unknown. Now, when you go to Mapungubwe Hill on the tour, and you have wonderful guides, you first of all go to an excavation site at the bottom of the hill, which is obviously kept with this to stop the animals going into it. And you get taken down there to look at the first excavations that were done. And then the excavations went up to the top of the hill. And this is the famous golden rhino that was found at Mapungubwe. And it's currently stored in Pretoria, in the Mapungubwe Museum at Pretoria University. But a replica exists in the Mapungubwe Museum. Now, what happened to these people? There's various theories suggested. It's no doubt that the area became drier and cooler. And now persistent droughts are very common, particularly in the last 10, 20 years. From the early 1300s till the mid-20th century, there was a mini ice age around the world, and glaciers grew in this period in Europe. So this obviously would have changed the vegetation in this area, and obviously the rainfall also reduced. Other theories were the minerals were running out, and that's why they moved. Another theory is that there weren't warrior people looking at their weapons, so perhaps they were invaded. But the theory is that probably they split up. Some merged in with the Venda of current days in the local area, the Venda, who many think that they're one of the lost tribes of Israel. And some certainly probably started the Zimbabwe ruins, where there's great commonality between some of the stonework which was found here. Now, there's still a lot to be found. There are over 400 archaeological sites in the Mapungubwe area, some dating back 1 million years. There are signs of early and middle and late Stone Ages, Iron Age sites. And there must be earlier settlements of the Mapungubwe people somewhere around that area. And all these archaeological sites are concentrated around the confluence of the Shasti and Limpopo rivers. Now, there was strong trade with East Africa and the Far East in ivory and gold, using the river as navigation by Arab traders who came up the Limpopo from the sea, traded beads for gold and gold artifacts and ivory. Now, when you go to Mapungubwe Hill in the nature reserve, you can't go there by car. So you first of all drive to the gate where they meet you. You get into a 4x4. They take you down a very rocky, steep hill down the side of a valley. And then you park the car and then you walk to Mapungubwe Hill. It's a short walk. And the first trip that I did there is Marika and I went by ourselves. We were lucky to go on a tour with the guide without anybody else. And the guide walks in front, obviously with a rifle, because you can see there's a giraffe over here. But we've come across elephant when we've been doing the walk. We've come across lion once. So you will do the short walk, and then you get to the hill. Now you get to the bottom of the hill, and you'll be relieved to know there's only 144 wooden steps to go up. And you can imagine how much more difficult it was before there was pathways and wooden steps up. It's not too bad because you go for level bits and you go up more steps, and it is quite easy to do. And that's the example of the steps going up. And once you get to the top, the view site is magnificent. And this is looking towards the Limpopo Valley in this distance here. And this is Cedric, the long hair. There are 3 guides that take you up to the top of Mapungubwe Hill. I've been with 2 of them, but all 3 are excellent. Cedric has appeared on a couple of BBC programs on Mapungubwe, and he is really an entertaining guide, as are the others. One of the other guides I've been to has written a book comparing what is found at Mapungubwe to the local traditions and tales of the Venda people. Now up there you get this is obviously where they were grinding corn, and the view sites are really lovely. Now when you walk on top of the hill, obviously it's protected because they still haven't excavated everything, so you walk on walkways. And this is what you'll come across on the way to the hill. Some elephants walking around. Wonderful countryside, and it varies hugely. Over the years I've been going there, there's been 2 long droughts. And of course you get the difference between the green or it becomes very, very barren. And this is up on the top of Mapungubwe Hill where the nobility lives. And this is a game that's still played by children in townships and rural areas. Coming down, I've always found a little more difficult than going up. But as long as you take your time, you're quite safe. Now this is where the Mapungubwe Museum is at Pretoria University. And at Mapungubwe National Park, there's a really quite beautiful structure that fits into the atmosphere of Mapungubwe, and it consists of a museum, a conference center, a shop, and a little restaurant. And the conference center is used because there's frequent school tours go there. Really beautiful, beautiful site. And the museum itself is really nicely done. Obviously, all the artifacts are replicas. Right? The real ones are kept at Pretoria University for security reasons. Except in the last 2 trips there's some of these lights weren't working and obviously need a little bit of attention. And this is in the Mapungubwe Museum. That's a replica of the golden rhino. But it's a nicely done museum. Lots of informative documents. Now, when we go up there are numerous sites to stay. We always stay at the biggest site, which is Leokwe Camp. It's about 40 kilometers from the entrance. And it consists of 18 chalets. The chalets 17 and 18 are really magnificent. Those are 2-bedroom chalets, each with their own bathroom. You have a lounge, dining room area, and you have a very large balcony. And both chalets, and I've stayed in both of them, really do have, you see a lot of game from the decks because they are really large. But all these other chalets are also lovely. And the main complex is a boma where there's a swimming pool, with a view site, well equipped, and that's where we cook. But all the chalets have a braai on their stoops. And that's the example of one of the chalets with the deck, with the stoop area. Now, all the chalets except 17, 18 have a bedroom, and you can push the beds together or keep them separate. Through here, there's a walkway to the bathroom, and the bathroom has a hand basin, quite a nice sized bathroom, a hand basin and a toilet. And then you have a door out into an enclosed shower area, which is partially outside. There's a little gap below and a little gap above. And then through this door here, you have a lounge, kitchen, dining room area, and then also that goes onto the balcony. All very well equipped. The two bedrooms, number 17, 18, they have one bedroom has a double bed, and there's the entrance to their bathroom. And the other bedroom is exactly the same as I showed you before. It's a twin-bedded room. The lounge dining room area, sometimes the tables are a bit bigger, generally spaced. You've got a kitchen in the corner, a little scullery. This couch can be converted into a probably uncomfortable bed. Some chalets have TV. All of them have air conditioning and a fan. And I find staying there, some for the bedrooms at night, rather than having a noisy air conditioner going, I've always prepared to put that big central fan on and leave the windows open that have mesh on, so you get a through draft, and the fan keeps you really cool. And the fan also keeps as the air conditioners, the mosquitoes away. Not that mosquitoes are a big problem. And there's the outdoor stoop with its, and every outdoor stoop has their own braai. And then on the second and third nights we're up in Mapungubwe, half the group, and normally the group size is about 20 people, go on an afternoon game drive, and then they have dinner out in the bush somewhere. And the other half, the guide and I took dinner. And what we have here is we have a braai area here, a very nice big braai area. Over here you can't see, there's a kitchen which you can get keys for, which is a very well-equipped kitchen. Over here is a little bar area. You can get the keys to put chairs out. There's a lot of chairs. There's this little deck area next, and the swimming pool's on the other side. And you've got a walkway up to a nice view area which looks onto the riverbed area where there's actually water holes. And you see often a lot of game. Now all the camps in the park, I mean, others are much smaller, none of them are fenced. So you get wild animals walking around the camp. Now this is the swimming pool. It's a little bit bigger than it looks in this picture. These are the stairs up to the view deck. And we sit around here, we sit in the open in a circle. It's always a wonderful occurrence. And you get frequent visitors. There's always elephants coming to drink out of the pool. Now below the pool, there is a water hole for them to drink out of, but they prefer to stand on that, and they drink from that, but they also prefer to stand on that and drink out of the pool. And they're quite friendly, the elephants. Not more than about 5 people a month get trampled to death in the camp by the elephants. And they really are, you don't get this every time, but over half the time I've been there, we've had elephants drinking out of the pool. And I've never been there when we haven't seen elephants walking around the camp. And sometimes in quite big herds of 30 or 40 elephants. And there's elephants walking along. And that picture is taken from the balcony. It's a mummy and 2 children. And what was particularly about that day is we were staying at number 17. There's a very sharp rock face. And all this huge herd of elephants came over right next to our balcony. We were sitting out in the afternoon before going out for a drive, right next to us. And how they managed to climb down that rock face so easily. And there's more elephants drinking at the pool. We're looking down on where the small pool is. Now this picture was taken that day I was telling you about from my bed, looking through the mesh. And this elephant, as you can see its bottom, came right next to there. There was an air conditioning unit sticking outside. It rubbed itself on the air conditioner to scratch itself. The air conditioner didn't work for the rest of the trip, of course. And then it walked away. And this was looking from the balcony. We had elephants. We could have touched them at one stage. There's giraffe. And what I particularly like about Mapungubwe, there's beautiful sandstone rocks which are all over the place. It really is a stunning area. And then, of course, what is so unusual are the way these, I think they're wild figs, I don't know much about vegetation, how they grow out of these little cracks and crevices in the rocks. I mean, this is a wonderful example. How on earth that exists like that? It grows out of there and survives. Now, one of the highlights is to go down to the Limpopo River, and you can walk on a boardwalk next to the river. And there was a sign up before you walked into onto the boardwalk from Rudyard Kipling's famous phrase, out of The Elephant's Child, "At last he came to the banks of the great grey green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever cheese. Well, the elephants obviously didn't like that sign because not only they smashed the sign down, they smashed the fence around the boardwalk down as well. Now, this is the start of the boardwalk, and you have a gate, which there's a big sign saying, please keep the gate permanently shut. And on a trip in 2019, and we did 3 for U3A that year, the boardwalk gate was open. So I told everyone, don't go in. I'll walk down to just make sure there's no animals. I just walked through the open gate, shut it, and I'd hardly gone two steps when 2 game reserve vehicles arrived. One was a truck, and one was an open vehicle. And there were 3 rangers, and they hooted, and then one of the rangers rushed the thing and said, "Don't walk down there. There's a lion down the boardwalk. We've come to move it." So I very quickly left, and we decided to do the walk on the boardwalk the next day instead. Now this is the Limpopo River. When I first went there, there'd been a drought for about 4 years, 3 or 4 years, and there was about a month before there was heavy rain in the area, and the river was in flood, and we had all the way along the boardwalk, we could look down onto crocodiles, there were hippos, and it was, then the river got drier, the Limpopo River got drier and drier, and that's Botswana over there. And there were animals and a few smaller crocodiles. Now, God knows what happened to the hippos and crocodiles in the water, which became thinner, and eventually it dried out completely. And for about 3 years, there was no water in the river. And this is at the Shasta. You can see the water eventually dribbles to just a trickle. And there you can see, this is actually from further down, the elephants from Mapungubwe crossing into Zimbabwe, because this is Zimbabwe. And round the corner where the boardwalk is along this section here, that's actually Botswana over there. There were elephants, a few elephants coming across. And you will see this constant movement of animals backwards and forwards. And what was also happening from Botswana, there are some cattle farmers, obviously, across the river. And the cattle were coming across in droves into Mapungubwe about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. And now this is taken from the boardwalk, a little bit of a telephoto, brought up a bit closer than it really is. And these 4 lionesses were following a whole group of cattle that were crossing into Mapungubwe. And I'm sure they were thinking, oh, lunch, easy hunting. You can have a nice steak for a change. Now, I downloaded this picture from the internet earlier this week. And Cyclone Eloise went south of Mapungubwe, and that's Limpopo in huge raging torrent again. When I went up there in February 2020, I was so delighted because I'd been there in November 2019 that the Limpopo was flowing again. And you can see it's flooding down, which is wonderful to see. And this is an earlier picture of the confluence. So what you have here is a Shasta River coming down here. This is Zimbabwe, that's Botswana. This is the island I talked about. Limpopo splits into 2, goes around there and around here, and the 2 join, and for the rest of the way to the sea, it's still known as the Limpopo. It's a picture from another point of the confluence when there's no water. And that's when it's sort of dwindling down with less water. Now, on the tour, what we do, as I mentioned earlier, the second and third night, half the group go for a game drive on each night, late afternoon game. And the first drive that went off, they all came back saying, we saw kangaroos. And on that particular drive, the river had quite a bit of water in. And they drove along in these dried up riverbeds, which flows into the Limpopo. And they were looking up, and they said, the ranger was with, who obviously was playing a fool, and said, "Look, there's kangaroos." And they looked up the bank, and they thought, there are really kangaroos there. And they all took pictures, and I didn't believe them. I thought they'd been drinking too much when they came back to the camp. And then they showed me their pictures. They did look like kangaroos. So there are no kangaroos in Mapungubwe, but there certainly are spring hares. And I suppose when you look up a riverbank at them in the moonlight, they do look like kangaroos. And those are the spring hares of Mapungubwe. Now, the South African spring hares, this is done by a survey done by Pretoria University. The spring hares could outjump the Australian kangaroos, despite the fact they're much smaller. And you can see the height that they can jump to, and a quicker height than the kangaroos from Australia. Now, when they go on the afternoon drive, they reach a point where they actually stop for dinner in the bush, and the people who do the catering for the dinners, if the river's in flood, they'll serve food on the bank of the Limpopo, or other times they used to drive onto a little island where the water was just sort of half the depth of the tires, and sit on the island. And when people would come there, and it depends on how much game they've seen, they very often get there in the total dark, and they suddenly see this table in the middle of nowhere with a candlelight. And I asked one of the catering staff to please take some pictures for me, because I've never been on this drive in the evening. And that's just taking it. And then what happened that day, and I was told, is they suddenly saw 3 people coming from Zimbabwe across. And at first they thought they were probably refugees walking their way into South Africa. And then they realized that there were 2 white ladies with them, and one of them was a worker, obviously at a reserve in Zimbabwe. And they'd walked across because they couldn't understand somebody was sitting up a restaurant in the middle of a dried up riverbed of the Limpopo. And they just came out of interest to see what the hell was going on. And there's and this man and his wife are ex-members of our Rotary Club. They arrived a bit early. It's a bit earlier drive. They hadn't seen much on the drive, but they saw a lot afterwards. And that's getting ready to sit down. Now, I said one of the things about Mapungubwe is this beautiful rock formation. But something also magnificent about Mapungubwe are the baobabs. There are magnificent baobabs all over. And the baobabs, which are most of them over 1,000 years old, they can store up to 70% of their trunk with water to allow them to survive the periods of drought. But sadly, they're getting endangered with global warming, and some of these really old, magnificent trees are starting to die. This is very close to the Leokwe camp. And these trees do get green when they're in the rainy season. Now, these 2 more younger baobabs, and you see the green is coming, are right next to the camp. And when we were there in February 2020 with a friend from the UK and Marika, the first morning we went out for early drive, there were a huge herd of elephants around here. And the next morning, there were lions around here. So I considered this to be a good spot to watch game. And quite a few times we've actually seen animals along this little section. Now, obviously, because of the 2 long periods of drought, the elephants who eat baobab, they like the bark, but they don't destroy it. They're now digging into the baobabs to get at the water. And this is obviously also having an effect on the baobabs. And there's another one digging his way into to get at water. Now, this slide I put on this is not a tree. On one of the tours, what we do is we arrive there, we drop them off at each of their chalets, and drop their luggage off. And there were two elderly ladies staying in the chalet, and they arrive there. The one lady stays inside unpacking her suitcase, while the other lady goes and sits on her balcony, who enjoy the view. And she's really looking at some monkeys who are playing in front of the balcony. And you really got to keep your doors and windows shut if you're not there. And also if you leave the windows open, just have the ones that have the mesh on. And she thought that there was a tree next to and suddenly she saw the tree move, and she realized she's actually sitting very, very close to an elephant, who obviously knew she was there and was quite unperturbed. And then what happened is the other lady suddenly walked out to talk to her, saw the elephant, screamed, ran back inside, and locked the door onto the balcony. So this poor lady was locked out on the balcony with the elephant running up. But the elephant seemed to be quite unperturbed. The other lady was terrified. She's obviously terrified of elephants. From that moment on, we had to take her to and pick her up at the door of the chalet. She refused to even take one step out with us all around her. So this is not a tree, it's an elephant. And you also get little friends coming around at night, particularly if they smell a braai. There's a rhino. And these are a little family of lions who do what lions do best. They spend most of the time sleeping and resting, doing absolutely nothing. There's rock paintings around. And of course, all these lovely views, that's next to the pool. And along this cliff here, you get a lot of cliff swingers in Mapungubwe, and they run on the sheer face. It's quite amazing to watch it. And that's looking down from another angle onto the Limpopo. You can see the island there. And this is they have some isolated camps. This is, I think, only got 5 chalets in. They're quite open on the side. They're much more rustic than, it's a lovely area, quite a lovely isolated area. And they have a hidden gem. When I just popped there to have a look at this place, one of the people came out and said, you must walk up to the pool, which was quite a little clamber up. And there, right up in the pool, you've got their own little, for these 5 chalets, only tiny little pool right up on the top of this hill with lovely views around. Now, this lioness was in our camp, and we drove up. We weren't quite as close as this picture shows because we just brought it closer. But it was lying right next to the road with our engine running, a vehicle there, and it didn't even open its eyes. It just carried on sleeping. Wonderful, wonderful sighting. There's some giraffe, and there's a lioness filmed quite close to number 17. Pictures taken also not quite as close as it looks, but it was no more than 15, 20 meters away from the balcony. Lovely views all around the place. Again, nothing nicer than going to the pool area or the deck, and the colors of these rocks change, either early morning with your coffee, or go and have a drink before we have dinner and watch the sun setting and all the colors changing on the rock. The Tembe tour starts off, we fly to Durban. From Durban, we stop the first night in Lake Jazini. We have a beautiful viewpoint. We go on a cruise the next morning, then we go to Tembe. This video is made up of photographs of videos taken by people on the August tour in 2022. This is the beautiful Tiger Bay Hotel, which is now called Lake Jazini Lodge. A most beautiful setting. That's the hotel on the narrow part of the lake. Beautiful places to sit
to eat, to drink, and then we make our way to Tembe the next day after having gone for a cruise on the lake. There's Tembe right on the Mozambique border, then Dumo, where we have an optional extra on one afternoon to go there, which is a famous birding place. Tembe is famous for its elephants because in the 18th and 19th century, there was a huge hunting of the elephants for their tusks by the white hunters. Because Tembe has this coastal forest where most of the elephants stay, the hunters were too scared to go in this dense bush to hunt. So it's the last pool of genes of the big tuskers. We sleep in beautiful tents, which vary in size, all with their own bathroom, air conditioning, and all of them have an outdoor massage area if you'd like a massage. There's a swimming pool, a beautiful outdoor area, and it's a very popular tour. I've had quite a few people that have done it 3 and in one case 4 times. It is a very, very popular pier. It's lovely to go back again and again. Most of the photographs and videos in this video were taken by people on the August tour in 2022. Tembe has a wonderful bird life, and these are some of the wonderful crested guinea fowl, quite different to the guinea fowl we get in the Cape. This is a waterhole close to the camp where there's a camera so you can watch it both from home and from the bar at Tembe, the animals there. This video was taken by me and I'm a terrible photographer. But I've seen lots of elephants here. I've seen an elephant chasing lion. I've seen a lion killed here. I've seen a buffalo chasing a lion here. This is in Dumo, where it's an option you can go on one day for a few hours. It's about 40 kilometers from Tembe. It's well known for its birding, although Tembe has magnificent bird life as well. Also, it has a very, very large crocodile population. And don't go swimming because those logs on the coastline there are crocodiles. Zampilo is a famous area along the N2. It's an honor market where 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, it's open. And the local people bring their artifacts and their fruit and vegetables and sell it there. They put a little slip of paper underneath it, and whoever's around takes the money and just puts the money into a little box. And at times it's totally unmanned and people still, it's called the honor market. Now this is mommy and daddy who have decided that they're worried about their junior crossing the road.
Let's wait for Sporan to come and join them.
Oh, is that what they're waiting for?
So they're standing guard to make sure that we don't drive into Junior when the baby comes out of the bush.
No, it's stopped.
Stop.